Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener, to our live show today. It's all about parenting. As you know, we have the campaign I Honor My Parents. And every month, the first Saturday of every month, we're dedicating Kardec Radio shows to empowering parents and also to raise their children's understanding on their role as well as children of their own parents. So if you want to know more about the campaign and especially the Declaration of True Civilization, please go to the website of the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, ssbaltimore.org/campaign, and you will get to know more about it. By the way, in a week from now, we're celebrating Mother's Day. The show today is a celebration to all mothers, a tribute to them, a true gratitude. At the end of the show, we're going to pray for our mothers to express our gratitude, no matter if they're incarnated or discarnated. And if you are there listening to us right now, here live at Kardec Radio, you can call us at 858-769-4705 and interact with us. Ask a question. We're here for you. It's a live show today, and we are going to have a very beautiful conversation. Kirsten Demelo and I will be talking about Parents Oversight today, Children's Challenge tomorrow. A most important topic to empower parents everywhere. And also, we cannot forget that as we are speaking, we have our show being broadcast directly at Spiritist.com, the web radio Bezerra Online, which is a multilingual web radio by our friends in Miami, Florida. You can access their beautiful programs as well at Spiritist.com. In a week from now, we have the 6th Symposium of the United States of America. It is the national meeting of all Spiritists in the United States of America, sponsored by several different organizations, including Kardec Radio, and organized by the United States Spiritist Council. We think you should register and come by. It's going to happen at the Rialto Center in Atlanta, Georgia, on May 12th, next Saturday. I think you shouldn't miss it. The theme is about love and enlightenment, a pathway to self-healing. Beautiful program. Go to the website spiritistsymposium.org and get to know about the beautiful program. The guest speaker is nobody less than Dr. Mike Baker, who is the renowned psychologist who wrote the best-selling book, Jesus, the Best Therapist Who Ever Lived. It's a most fraternal moment of enlightenment, instructions for everyone. Right now, dear listener, as we prepare ourselves for the topic and open the line for our friend Kirsten Demelo, would like to share with you that Allan Kardec is a great educator. He was mainly concerned about how people were educating their children. And in question 208 of the Spirit's book, he asks, don't the spirits of parents exert an influence on their children after birth? And the answer of the illuminated spirit is a very great influence, because as we have already said, spirits should aid in one another's progress. As it is, the spirits of the parents have the mission of developing their children through education. This is a task for them. If they fail to perform it, they will be guilty. There's so much to learn and to know, and that's why we're here at Kardec Radio in this show today about how to empower parents, reminding them that their oversight today may generate a lot of challenges for their children tomorrow. And to keep the joy in our hearts as we pay this tribute today to all mothers of all times and of all the world. Let us listen to this beautiful message by the Spirit May May through Chico Xavier's hands, entitled Joy, in the book and CD, published by the Spirit Side of Baltimore, Enlightening Messages.
Joy. Joy is the song of the hours when God caresses your passage through the world. Everywhere flowers bloom as smiles of nature, and the wind combs the field's hair with resting music. The water from the fountain is liquefied care in earth's heart, and the small golden grain of sand is a message of joy from the ground. Do not allow, therefore, that your difficulty transforms itself into numbing sadness for others. Even if everything appears to conspire against the happiness that you await, lift your eyes to the smiling face of life that envelops you, and bolster joy wherever you go. Bless and serve always, even among tears. The rose, although subjugated by thorns, still offers its perfume, and sunrise awaits generously for the night to finish in order to renew itself. Daily, in a party of love and light.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live, every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Join us every Thursday, live, Evolution in Two Worlds, a journey of the soul through the teachings of the Spirit Doctor, Andrea Luiz. Connect at www.tvcei.com, Channel 2.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Hi, this is Nara Beniti with Succeed in America by Packaging Your Brilliance. And our topic today is Project Self-Confidence. Generally speaking, American employers look for employees who are competent, honest, reliable, flexible, energetic, self-starting, and self-confident. Other desirable qualities are effective communication, leadership, the ability to work well in a team, and enthusiasm. A global outlook, creativity, and the ability to present your accomplishments, which is self-promotion, are also welcomed in a well-rounded candidate. By now, you're probably intimidated and saying, how can I have all of these qualities? Don't worry. I have described the ideal employee, but in reality, a candidate rarely possesses all of these qualities. Employers understand that, and they understand that everyone has both strengths and weaknesses. The person selected for the job is the one whom the employer perceives as having the greatest strengths and the fewest weaknesses. Employers throughout the world share many of the same values or requirements. However, different nations may have their own interpretations of them. And the United States has its own definition of the top qualifications desirable in an employee. Projecting self-confidence is very important in the American workplace. In the United States, People project confidence by keeping their posture straight, maintaining eye contact, keeping a relaxed, pleasant expression on their face, and smiling. Keep in mind that a smile is a standard part of the greeting in the United States. When you're greeting your interviewer, maintain eye contact, smile, and shake his or her hand. If you do not smile, Americans will interpret this as unhappiness or think that you have a poor attitude. Who wants to hire someone who will appear unhappy on the job? In some cultures, looking down when communicating with a prospective employer is a sign of respect. Not in the United States. Americans may think that you lack confidence and or have something to hide if you do not look a person in the eye. And this was Nara Venditti with Succeed in America by Packaging Your Brilliance. If you have any questions or suggestions for our future mini show on Succeed in America by Packaging Your Brilliance, please email me at nara@succeedinamerica.com. It's NARA @SUCCEED in America.com. And thank you for listening.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here live at Kardec Radio talking about Parents, Oversight Today, Children's Challenge Tomorrow. By the way, you can listen to the whole talk and watch it tonight at the Spiritist Society of Baltimore webcasting. Go to ssbaltimore.org/webcast and watch it live at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Here we are with our friend Kirsten Demelo, who is going to talk with us about this most important topic. Hi, Kirsten. How are you?
Good. Good morning, Vanessa. Thank you for having me this morning.
Yeah, we have so much to celebrate about our mothers, right? In a week from now, mothers like yourself will be receiving a big hug from their children, hopefully, right?
Yeah, most definitely. And it's quite providential, today's show. It really gives us a boost as mothers. And, mothers and non-mothers alike, we are all parents in some form, as we will discuss today. We all oversee children in our centers and everywhere and elsewhere.
Yes. So, Kirsten, when Kardec brings to us in the Gospel According to Spiritism, chapter 14, I honor my parents, that attitude of honoring parents, St. Augustine says that parents are here to lead their children's soul to God. But it's not quite what parents are aware of. And big mistakes may happen if we don't have a true direction for the mission of parents. What do you think about it?
Absolutely. And this idea, we have to, complementing Kardec equally, Joanna talks about it in the family constellation when she talks about that, family is a foundation upon which society's immense building is erected. And this idea and the responsibility as parents that we have, it's not, unfortunately, yet something that's widespread within our society. There's certain parts in our society that still lack that education, and it's not common knowledge yet that the necessity of educating our children in a certain way, or just educating them in general beyond the sending them to school, paying attention to our children's tendencies and educating them at home. I think oftentimes in our fast-paced world, single parents or even two-parent households, the hustle and bustle of life, we sometimes can either forget about it, be negligent of it, and it's something definitely in our society needs to be implemented much more.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and Kirsten, we say the mission of parents is to lead to God, but we are often telling our children, leading them to their own selfishness and pride, because the spirits say the main mission is to lead them to God and rid them of the roots of selfishness and pride. But what do we often see and hear parents doing? And we understand they don't do it out of evil, but most often out of ignorance, saying, what do you want to do when you grow? up, or they say, you are growing up and you need to realize what you want to do and go after it. It's all about their whims, and we push them, that in them. You need to do what you want to do. And how often we are making a mistake because we're teaching them that their will is sovereign and above even God's will. Right?
Right. Yeah, Vanessa, you bring up a really good point. And again, we have to agree with you in the statement that you make that oftentimes parents do not do this on purpose to be negligent on purpose towards their children. It's just a lack of understanding on their part, because as parents we also need to be educated. Across the board, we all need to be educated, really. But something that we can discuss is that oftentimes we find parents say, well, when my child grows up, for example, they'll choose their own religion. I don't want to impose it. But interestingly enough, it's something quite vital we need to. And again, going back to this book that Joanna writes, Family Constellation, she talks about that the fundamental element of education, that this religious orientation in our family becomes indispensable, that we orient our children towards religiosity. And what is religiosity other than just, like you said, teaching our children about God and making that connection with our Creator, and not just allowing our children to just go and make their own decisions.
Yes, and so let us brainstorm in some cases here. What would be to be observant of our children's behavior? Because St. Augustine says in that chapter 14, item 9, he said these very words about, as if we could say we should become scientists of our children. He says, from childhood, children manifest the good or evil instincts that they have brought from previous lives, and it is necessary that we apply ourselves to studying them. So it's almost as if we need to have a magnifier, like scientists do, to observe the behavior of our children, not only simply glance over it, or take a glance, or take a quick look, but really study. Study means take your time, observe. And for example, if selfishness and pride are the two main reasons why we should, study their behavior to help guide them out of those two, what would be selfishness, for example? Selfishness would be like, my child's more important than everybody else's child. So how can I actually get rid of selfishness in my child if I have it in myself? Thinking that my child is more important than everybody else's children. And second, pride, also contained in that type of statement, thinking that we're more important than others, irrespective of their social status. So what do you think in that regard, Kirsten? Cases of selfishness, pride in children and parents. All right. So I think probably have a technical difficulty
hello?
here.
Yes,
yes.
I'm back. Slight technical difficulty. I apologize for that. Yeah, I absolutely we agree with you, Vanessa. According to the literature by Kardec and the Noble Spirits, and they talked as parents, we have to show the example. We have to be the living teachers, on our part, because children tend to follow more the nonverbal versus the verbal, because there's two types of communication in psychology. We learn about that, the verbal and nonverbal. So children will follow more of what we do. So we have to ask ourselves as parents that if our children are displaying this behavior, do I myself have it as well? Because it's very difficult to educate our children about selfishness when I'm still very selfish. And if our children see us telling them, oh, don't be selfish, share your toys, be kind to your friends, your little friends at school, share your things, but yet they find us being very selfish. It's very conflicting, and oftentimes children will not follow that.
Mm-hmm.
It is a great responsibility as parents. And question 208 of the Spirits books, when Kardec asked the spirits of the parents exercise an influence on their children after birth, and the spirits answer, a great influence. Because As we have already said, spirits should aid in one another's progress. As it is, the spirits of the parents have the mission of developing their children through education. The task is for them, and if they fail to perform it, they will be guilty. So we have a responsibility to educate our children and to pay attention to all the tendencies. And it seems tedious because perhaps maybe some of our listeners saying, well, in a 24-hour day, I spend maybe 6 hours with my child. How can I compensate for the other? Well, we can do our best, and that is also taken into account, our intentions, because God knows each one of us has to work, but during those 6 hours, during our God at home with our children, we can even in the morning, when we're driving our children to work, utilize those time periods always to talk to our kids about the importance of being virtuous. And what does that mean? From a young age, we don't have to wait till they're 10, 12. As a matter of fact, we should start at a very young age teaching them. As much as we're teaching them about the alphabet, ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, we also should be teaching them about morality in a simplistic way.
Exactly, and that's what. Exactly. So that's why we would say to parents, before you have children, think twice, because are you ready to be an educator? Because that's what parents are all about. They are educators, and that's why it's a true mission. So, Kirsten, as you were talking about this, we're talking about the moral influence of parents in their home. We're going to broadcast this segment by the Master in Education, also Spiritist Bernadette Leal. She's talking about the importance of teaching our children at home, especially the moral values that Kirsten Demelo was talking to us about. And when we come back, we're going to come back with questions from our audience. You can call us at 858-769-4705.
Welcome to our Youth Education in Spiritism with the Kardec Radio. I am Bernadette Leal, and I'll be spending a few minutes with you, inspiring to bring spiritual awareness and Spiritist teachings to our youth, parents, and educators. Today, we will answer 3 questions about the influence of home in the moral development of a child. First question: how does the home environment influence the moral formation of a child? In order to answer this question, first, we would like to mention the answer to question 892 of the Spirit's book about parents' responsibility. It says, parents have been trusted with the education of their children. Their mission is to make every possible effort to bring their children back onto the right path. The education that we would like to focus here is not the intellectual one, but the moral education of the child. We know that every family has different moral values. So when we talk about moral education, it is the one taught by Jesus and the great masters of humanity, which is to treat others the way you want to be treated, love your neighbor, compassion, patience, respect, and also teaching about choices and consequences and how our actions can affect others. But where does the moral education start? At home. The child will become what they have learned at home. So the more solid moral education the child has learned and experienced, the more she'll be able to handle and transform negative influences and behavior outside home, knowing not only how to make wise choices, but also how to treat others well. One serious problem that we have nowadays is that parents are leaving to the school and teachers to do the moral education, moving away from the full responsibility of parenthood. Then later, parents complain when their children show a selfish behavior, when in fact there was no time spent on the child's moral development. Remember, children are like clay, and the figure will be a representation of what they were molded. Children learn by example, and they will be confused if they have parents or caregivers who are not consistent on what they say and do? How can we ask a child to be understanding and treat others with respect when she hears us talking bad about our neighbors or someone in the family? How can we expect a child to be loving and peaceful when she has seen their parents emotionally and physically abusing each other? We can start by assessing our home environment by asking ourselves, is my house a peaceful place? Do my children feel safe at home? Are there a lot of arguments, yelling, and name-calling at home? We all know that there are challenges and some stressful situations in our lives and family at times, but there is always a peaceful way of handling any problem and showing a good example of conduct. A home should be a sanctuary. Second question. I've been raising all my children the same way and noticed that in spite of my efforts, they show very different behavior. Why? Well, this is a question that Spiritism can help us to answer. Although in a young body, every child is, in fact, an old spirit who lived many lifetimes. She will show not only the progress that she has made, but also weaknesses and negative tendencies that upon which she needs to work. Therefore, each child is a unique spirit. A parent who is attentive will start to notice their children's tendencies and should help them to improve and work on their moral development. It is like driving a car. Depending on the road and where we want to go, we have to turn the steering wheel to the right or to the left or make some stops. Each child is a spirit who has a different road to travel, and it is the parent's responsibility to steer the wheel when children are growing up to keep them on the right path and not drive off a cliff or have accidents that can harm not only themselves but others as well. Certainly, we have offered them equal amount of unconditional love, but educationally speaking, they should be raised differently because each child is a different spirit with different needs. Observe your child's tendencies from the cradle, as says St. Augustine in chapter 14, item 9 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, and you will see and be able to customize your educational approach with each of your children. After all, a parent is an educator. Third question. My child is angry, raises his voice, and sometimes ignores me. What should I do? The most important thing that parents can do for their children is to love them. You may not like or love what they do, but you should love them unconditionally. Children need to know that they are loved and feel loved. So when a child or teenager shows, for instance, a defiant behavior or seem angry, it is because they are trying to communicate something. They may be unhappy or frustrated, but in fact, they lack the skills to talk about their feelings and do not know how to handle their frustrations. So when you are facing a situation in which your child is acting out, yelling, or ignoring you, the first question is to ask yourself, what is my child trying to tell me? There are two ways in which you can interpret a child's behavior. It is through action or reaction. For instance, let's say your child is throwing a tantrum for not getting what she wants. A reaction is, what a brat! She needs some spanking, which is, by the way, something we do not encourage here, or she needs a time out. Now here's the action. Wow! My child has not learned yet how to be patient and is showing selfish behavior. I need to work on help her to be more understanding. Another example. Let's say that your teenager is spending most of the time at the computer and ignoring you. Reaction. What a selfish son I have. He does not care about his parents. Action. I need to spend more time with my son and show interest in what he likes. The challenge in interpreting the communication with the action perspective is that we may find out that the problem starts with the parents, and they are not ready to hear that. Well, it is true that sometimes the problem has to do with parenting, but it's also where we may find the solution. Kardec Radio listeners, home is where the education of the spirit starts. Leaving the parenting job to school or society can have serious consequences. We know a real story of a parent who wanted to raise her child setting no limits or letting her make her own choices instead of guiding her in her behavior or in her moral and spiritual growth. As a result, the child grew up with no empathy toward others, showing selfish behavior and with no spiritual connection to God. Today, her mother regrets and wishes she had raised her daughter differently. Parents and educators, children need limit, guidance, consistency, and education in all areas, physically, intellectually, morally, and spiritually. Let's guide them in a loving and conscious way so they can make smart choices in life and become responsible adults with great moral values. Let's love them. And as Dr. Wayne Dyer said, by giving children lots of affection, you can help fill them with love and acceptance of themselves. Then, that's what they will have to give away. Thanks for listening to Yes. And if you have any questions that would like us to answer, please email to kardec@kardecradio.com.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live, every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Save the date for the 6th U.S. Spiritist Symposium that will be held at the Rialto Center for the Arts at Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia on Saturday, May 12, 2012. This year's topic is Love and Enlightenment, a Pathway to Self-Healing. Come out and enrich your mind, body, and soul. For more info, go to www.spiritistsymposium.org.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
The newest edition of the Medium's book by Allan Kardec is now available. Purchase your copy online or via your ebook reader. Simply go to www.ediciofamerica.com today.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Join us every Thursday live. Evolution in Two Worlds, a journey of the soul through the teachings of the Spirit Doctor, Andrea Luiz. Connect at www.tvcei.com, Channel 2.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Spiritism for Everyone, the online study of the Spirit's Book and the Gospel according to Spiritism. Spiritism for Everyone meets every Wednesday evening and Saturday morning using the latest technology in web conferencing. You can join in from any computer in the comfort of your home or office, no matter where you are in the U.S. or the world. Spiritism for Everyone is open, free, and requires no registration. To access the web live meetings, go to www.spiritus.us. Spiritism for Everyone is a program of the United States Spiritist Council.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we're talking about Parents Oversight today, Children's Challenge tomorrow. Yes, being a parent is quite a mission. It is the mission of an educator, but we need to educate ourselves first. We cannot teach them something we're not doing ourselves. It's about walking the talk. There is so much to disclose, and Kirsten Demelo and I are here to talk about The Spiritist view on parenting, knowing that Allan Kardec disclosed in a comment to question 685 that education is the sum of all newly acquired habits. Habits is all about discipline, time, persistence. By the way, Pestalozzi himself, who was the teacher of Allan Kardec in that life in Switzerland, he used to say that to educate we need 3 elements: work, solidarity, and perseverance. So, dear parents, don't think it's an extreme job, because actually the Spirit says, St. Augustine, it's not impossible. It's easier than we imagine, but it must begin with us. That's when it becomes tough to be a parent, because we want our children to be better than us, but we don't want to fix ourselves up. And talking about it, Kirsten, we have here Jay, right, from Canada, who wants to ask us a question.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Jay from Canada.
All right. So, Jay, welcome to Kardec Radio again. How are you?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
All right. How is Canada? What is the weather there?
Oh, it's where I live in Western Canada. It's pretty nice. So.
All right, Jay. So, I know you have a question for us regarding parenting. Would you like to ask us now? Yes.
My question is to both of you. This is a really surprising observation. I've never seen in most of our society right now, is that we're so disconnected with each other, and we're communicating with technology that keeps us more separated and more apart. And I just wondered, are parents starting to notice that this is actually that the basics are really required for this spur on spiritual growth that's happening on this earth right now? Because I just find that this is it's an interesting time for parenting right now, where technology is really playing havoc in the basics of parenting: love, communications, togetherness. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about that.
Exactly. So, Jay, as you observe, it's like, parents usually, they are learning themselves to use technology. I've seen parents who are there at dinner time, they have their laptop open, and they're working on their things, and children are talking to them. They're barely responding. They think that their work is a priority at dinner time. So the first thing we would say is parents need to learn how to use technology wisely and at the proper time before they teach their children to do the same. Would you agree?
Yes. I one time I saw a son and a father sitting in a restaurant across the dinner table, and one had their cell phone, the other one had the other cell phone, and they weren't even communicating. So
that's not good.
Of course, it's not good. So it's just setting up for really bad stuff in parenting. I just wonder what your guest's thoughts are about that.
All right, Jay, we thank you so much for participating and bringing this most important topic, because certainly it's what we would consider an oversight, right, Kirsten? What do you think?
Absolutely. It's also the responsibility of the parent at a very young age. We're not just plopping our children in front of the TV, which we find oftentimes can happen, especially very busy parents, like you mentioned. And it's almost an unconscious habit. As parents, we could, like you said, bring your cell phone. And I've as well seen it many times, Jay, going to restaurants and seeing each one of the parents, including the children. Everybody nowadays has an iPhone. And it's quite a comical scene. But we aren't to use this technology, which is a great medium for us, for our own detriment. It's not meant to break down the lines of communication, but to improve it, hopefully. But it is all in how we choose to use it as parents. We don't see technology as something bad, but as a source of goodness, depending on how we use it.
Yeah, we see many people with lots of conflicts, and technology can be great armor to protect us from facing our own conflicts. And that's what we've seen lately, parents and children, people in general, using technology, even in classrooms, students using laptops not to interact with faculty or one another during class. And, it's amazing that sooner or later they will become healthcare providers behind a laptop, and later on, as they are practicing, they'll have to face their patients. And no wonder healthcare is falling apart as is, and not only in regard to patient management, but mostly, and the same is happening at all other areas of our lives, including parenting. So we would say, Jay, we should start from ourselves first. Parents should pay attention to their own discipline to teach their discipline to their children, because there is a study that was recently published showing that children who have great levels of self-discipline, they will more likely be at higher levels of performance in their academic performance than children who actually have simply high IQ. It's a combination. And how can we teach our children discipline if we don't discipline ourselves? We don't stop looking at our cell phones, as you're saying, at dinner time. How can we tell our children, have credit to tell them, look, stop it now while we're doing it ourselves? So it's not as hard if we embrace the discipline we want to teach them ourselves. It makes sense? Does it, Jay?
Yeah, it does. I just find that there's a kicking and screaming attitude about kids. That if I don't get one, I'm gonna rebel because my other friends have one, and then you create this pattern that never ends. So where does the word no come in effect?
Yes, that's a good question, Jay. And we would say we should start from the very beginning. When they are very, very little, as St. Augustine, we would say to everybody, read item 9 of chapter 14 of the Gospel According to Spiritism. We would say that the spirit of St. Augustine brings a true thesis on how to proceed as parents. And he says quite clearly, almost as if he's giving us an aid kit for parents. He brings us main elements. We're going to talk about it tonight at the webcasting of the Spirit Side of Baltimore at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But he gives us a pill, a magnifier, and a scissor. And within that, he says, this magnifier for parents is study your children's behavior and use that scissor to weed out the vices. And, of course, once you get rid of the weed of the vices, you are reinforcing and giving room to the virtues. So, Jay, thank you so much for being with us at Kardec Radio. We want to hear from you more often, okay?
Hey, no problem. Thanks so much.
Thank you. So, Kirsten, does it make sense that if we do it from the very beginning, from the cradle, talking to children, because parents they think that, my child does not understand what I talk about, and it's a major oversight not explaining or talking to our children from the very, very beginning. Just because they cannot communicate back to us, we assume that if we talk to them, they're not going to understand. But Spiritism says otherwise, that there is a millennial spirit there absorbing everything, right?
Absolutely. Just because the physical output of their brain is unable to respond back exactly does not mean that they're not absorbing some degree what we're teaching them. And it comes to mind that Dr. Maria Montessori, the famous physician and Italian educator, that talked about, when mothers would approach her when they were pregnant saying, Dr. Montessori, when should I begin to educate my child? And she often responded 20 years ago. And it's a sense of responsibility that she shares with us as parents. We need to educate ourselves. And for those parents who already have children who are older or who are 1 year old or whatever age they may be, and they may be thinking, well, I guess it's too late for me. It's never too late. Like you just said, we are millennial souls. We are millennial spirits. We can always educate ourselves and our children as well.
Exactly. Right? Yes, and when we talk about education and we're talking about new habits, to create new habits, it takes time and it takes perseverance and persistence. And it's not like simply second nature. Though we are conditioned beings, we need to take time and reinforce. It's like going to the gym. We're not going to build muscle by going to the gym once. And how many parents, they, in their oversight, their business of life, they get distracted and they say, I have already told you, but how many times have you already told your child? Once, twice, 3 times? But we're talking about a millennial spirit that has a lot of baggage, a lot of, misconception, a lot of vices, and telling them once or twice is not enough. We need to bring them to the gym of new habits every day. Every day. So, Kirsten, also there's another thing, another oversight is parental projection. It's when parents, in their frustrations, they overstimulate their children in things that they wanted to excel or do and they didn't do themselves. And that can create a lot of problems for their children in the future because their children will do things they don't want to do, and they're doing this just out of pleasing their parents and gaining their appreciation and love. What do you think in that regard?
Absolutely. And Joanna DeAngelis in the book Family Counselor, she talks about that oftentimes in mothers who put their children into certain types of classes or things because they themselves had never had the opportunity to do it. So you're recreating themselves in miniature in your children, which also leads to much stress later on in life for the children because that was not what they were intended to do with their lives. And it's sort of you're misguiding our children in that respect. And it's something we have to answer for later on in life as parents, whether in this life or in the next. It's a tremendous responsibility. And Vanessa, you also mentioned about not just telling our children once or twice to not do this or do that, but creating new habits. It is so vital, and showing and educating and not becoming tired of being parents. And oftentimes we just feel we give up to some extent. We get tired as parents. We are tired of telling our children a million times to not do something. And perhaps we need to reevaluate our own tactics as parents. Because sometimes we learn bad tactics from our parents. We don't know how to parent. There isn't necessarily the perfect book, other than we always encourage the Spirit's book and the Gospel and all the literature of Spiritism to really aid us and assist us in this process of re-educating and educating our children. And more importantly, like you said, ourselves, and not forgetting about that continuous education that needs to go on for us as parents to be able to really share that with our children along the continuum of life.
Exactly. And another oversight, Kirsten, is that parents often, because, in this contact with our children, it's as if we're seeing the mirror of ourselves. And that's supposed to be so because it's a two-way process in education. As we educate our children, we're educating ourselves. And that's why it becomes bothersome for many parents, tiresome for many other parents, because in that relationship with our children, we see ourselves and the need to change ourselves. And it's very tricky for many, many parents, especially when we talk about addictions, because all parents dream about not having addicted kids. And we're not talking about drug addiction alone. We're talking about addiction to anything that is not healthy, including food, especially in the United States of America and around the world nowadays. We have food addictions. But psychologists realize that parents, the first addiction they are teaching their children is food addiction. From the very beginning, when they are proud of having very big, tall, high, big kids, bigger than the average. You talk to parents and they're so proud. My child is, taller than the average kid. And in that pride, they are feeding food addiction as well. So what can we do, Kirsten, in the Spiritist view to prevent but also remedy this kind of addiction?
moral education within the home is a great resource for us against this pandemic, as Joanna Giannis refers to it as. Moral education in the home is absolutely essential at a young age and along the continuum, especially during the teenage years, and paying attention to all the difference in hormones and behaviors of our children to sort of, cut out the root of the problem and to not allow it to escalate. It is really important. And conversation, talking at a young age to our children and not waiting. Oftentimes as parents we become very busy and we dismiss our children at a young age, but if we don't build up a rapport with our own children on how to conversate with them, having open lines of communication always from a young age, and if we do not create that communication, that ability to talk to our kids and allow our kids to talk to us, we should not be surprised that when they reach their teenage years and we don't have that connection with them, we don't know how to talk to them because we never created it ourselves. So this idea of having a sincere conversation with them, an open conversation from the get-go at a young age, educating them and not allowing society, teachers at school to simply be the only ones that educate our children, especially about drug addiction and all types of addictions that can be truly fatal to our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly. As you're talking about communication, Kirsten, it reminds me of and Jay mentioned that as well, about the importance, how nourishing good communication between parents and children can be. And oftentimes we are mistaken that our children will not understand from an early age. And it's important to remind our listener that Spiritism is well aligned with science, especially neuroscience, showing to us that the first 7 years in life are vital. The brain of your child is like clay. Whatever you sow there, we will reap. Says also St. Augustine. This is actually one of the talks we're going to address in the 6th symposium in a week from today in Atlanta, Georgia. But Kirsten, it reminds me about Euripides Barçanuffo's Spiritist view on education. He was a great mind and a great Spiritist and political figure also in the countryside of the state of Minas Gerais, in the city of Sacramento. Quite a missionary mind. He created the first school with Spiritist teachings named Allan Kardec College. And he used to teach parents and educators to talk to their children spirit to spirit. So when he used to say, you are educating the spirit, not the child alone. You're educating that soul for immortality, meaning, practically speaking, he used to say, we need to look at a child in the eyes and talk to the spirit. Don't expect your child to elaborate anything in return, but be assured, rest assured, your child, the millennial spirit that animates that child's body, is absorbing not only your words, but your magnetism. So we would talk to a child, for example. Let's say a child brought a pencil from school. And let's say you're working at your computer, you're busy, you have a project at work, and you have deadlines, and you simply dismiss it, and you don't realize that behind that little thing, there is a lot more from previous lives. So let's say this parent is aware of what it means in that attitude. So we stop whatever we're doing, look at the child in the eye. At the same level, we shall never abuse our power as parents, because we are very abusive oftentimes, thinking that, oh, I am your mother, I'm your father, and you do as I speak, as I say so, and period. This is abuse of power. We should be educators. Go to their level, eyesight, eye to eye, and say, where did you bring that pencil from? Oh, from school. Who gave it to you? Well, I don't know. It was there. It was nobody's. No, it must be somebody's. and look at them in the eyes and say, look, we need to respect people's properties. It's not ours. Even a flower in the garden is not ours. It's God's. We need to ask permission. We need to be aware that we're not entitled to everything that is in front of us just because it seems it's not somebody else's. That respect to everybody else's property, to God's world as well, will teach them a lesson for eternity, for greater and critical situations in the future when they become adults and they feel entitled to things that are not theirs. For example, politicians. How many politicians feel entitled to the money that they are given for the projects of the city, and they feel like, I made great effort to pass this law. Now part of this money is ours. And many of them are being sued and are going to jail. In other countries, not quite. But in America, we know if this happens, they know they're going to suffer consequences. So the mistake comes from an early age, right, Kirsten? I know you have also, as a mother, great experiences in regard to observing behavior and being quite acquainted of the consequences if we don't weed those things out from the very beginning.
Absolutely. And as Pavlov, this great researcher, more decades ago, had shared with us, and we learned with him about that we are conditioned beings, and if we condition our children to understand that, firstly, that we are responsible parents, we care about them, and every little detail that they do, we condition them to realize that every time they do something wrong, there is a consequence. Every time when they're not with us, which is a majority of the time of their lives, they grow up and move on with their lives, they have that seed of the idea of self-responsibility and action and reaction, that there's consequences for everything that we do. So if we're really educating our children, we know that the next time they try to go to take something that's not theirs, automatically being conditioned by their parents, they recall to their mind that, wait, I have to really think about this. But oftentimes we see a lot of children who've grown up to be adults who commit crimes just because they lacked that education in their childhood. There was negligence within the family. And it's something for us to really to think about. And going back to the idea of, as parents, we also need to really educate ourselves continuously. And also because we are not perfect, obviously. We are millennial souls or millennial spirits, constantly learning. So we need to constantly also educate ourselves for the betterment of ourselves and also for our children, because our children watch what we do and will follow what we do.
Exactly. And in regard to that, Kirsten, what we do, one of the most difficult lessons in family life is to learn to forgive, right? It's very difficult, and we cannot teach our children, especially if they come with tendencies of holding grudges, because there are people who hold grudges more than others. There are levels. And some children, you can see from an early age that they are very sensitive, they're overly sensitive, and they hold grudges very often. And we want to teach them how to forgive, but are we good at forgiving ourselves and forgiving others? So, Kirsten, we're going to listen now to a segment that Dr. Margolians put together on importance of forgiveness. And when we come back after the break, we have more on parents' oversight and children's challenges.
Hello, dear Kardec Radio listener. Welcome to the segment Spiritism in Your Life. Today we're going to talk about the importance of forgiveness. As Jesus answered us, how many times should I forgive my brother and my sister? Not 7 times, but 70 times 7. In other words, we should not count how many times we forgive. We should forgive from the bottom of our hearts always. And why is that so important? If we believe in a single existence, then forgiving may not make a lot of sense. Forgetting seems to be way more easy and practical. We just forget about it, and that's it. But now, if we understand that we live multiple existences, the idea of forgiving really turns to be extremely important, because even if we forget it, we will eventually go through that same situation again. The Spirit Hamed in the book Changing Attitudes, psychographed by Francisco de Espírito Santo Neto, wrote a very interesting explanation of the importance of forgiving. And here's what he said. We try to live away from our resentments and old griefs, distracting with games and hobbies, or even seeking relief in work without interruption, when we are, in fact, just putting off the solution for pain because these measures are temporary. It is easier to say that one has a gastric ulcer than admitting that there's marriage dissatisfaction. It is also easier to hide behind cramps than admitting being a nervous and inflexible person. Many diseases that were previously considered organic are now being recognized as psychosomatic effect, because expressive psychological factors were found in their origin. Physical sickness are almost always translated as somatization of sick memories of hatred and revenge that result in long-term chronic diseases. Thus, you will understand that the severity and the length of your symptoms of organic prostration and abatement are directly proportional to the persistence to keep your old past wounds open. People's physical propensity to diseases are nothing but the moral trends of the soul that can modify blood qualities, giving it higher or lower activity, provoking increased or decreased acid or hormonal secretions, or even disturbing cell multiplications, compromising health as a whole. To have physical balance, we need to improve our intimate attitudes by keeping harmony in our souls. But if we want health and peace, we should get rid of these heavy burdens that prevent us from flying higher to the possibilities of unconditional forgiveness. Forgiving doesn't mean to forget the deep scars we were left or to close our eyes at people's malice. Forgiving means we need to develop a deep feeling of understanding by recognizing that we and others are still very far from correct acting. Because we are not, at least in the present, in complete contact with the intimacy of our divine creation, we will get rid of old diseases when the old memories of non-forgiveness stop ruling our lives for good. As we read in the passage by Hamed, it is now clear to us how important it is for our physical health to forgive ourselves and others, and to understand that by forgiving, we are actually allowing us to live a better life, a healthier, happier life, and we are able to learn even more in this existence. And now, to finish our segment today, we're going to read a passage by the Spirit Simeon in the Gospel According to Spiritism, chapter 10. Here's what he said. O Spiritists, never forget that in words as well as in actions, forgiveness of wrongs must not be an empty expression. If you say you are Spiritists, then be so. Forget the evil that has been done to you, and think of one thing only, the good you can do. Those who enter upon this path must not wander from it, even in thought, because they are responsible for their thoughts, known by God. Therefore, empty your thoughts of any sentiment of rancor. God knows what lies at the bottom of each one's heart. So, happy are they who can go to sleep every night saying, I have nothing against my neighbor. Remember, my friends, love one another, and God bless us.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Enjoy this new release. We're Born for Love by the renowned Brazilian scientist and researcher on reincarnation, Dr. Hernani Andrade. This novel describes one of the most extraordinary and genuine cases of reincarnation ever studied by Dr. Andrade's Brazilian Institute of Psychobiophysics Research in Sao Paulo State. Order your copy now at roundtable.uk@gmail.com or at www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com.
Spiritist Network, your gateway to on-demand Spiritist videos. www.spiritistnetwork.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Want to find a good way to explain life after physical death to kids or teenagers? Check out the book Message from a Teen in the Spirit World by the Spirit Neo Lucio and Psychograph by Chico Xavier. In this book, a teenager named Carlos explains his impressions on the new life in the spirit realm with his discarnate relatives and new friends. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
The Spiritist Magazine is a trimestral digital periodical that publishes the latest news on the Spiritist thought and the movement in the USA and worldwide. Subscribe now at www.spiritistmagazine.com.
In the book, A Primer on Being Good by the Spirit May, psychographed by the medium Chico Xavier, explains in simple language appropriate for children two paths in life, the path of good or the path of evil. God has granted us the freedom to choose either one. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
Now we return to our program.
Yes, dear listener, it's about tribute to Mother's Day. Our mothers deserve our gratitude, irrespective of their performance as mothers. As says Mentor Joseph, we cannot demand on parents' perfection once our children, ourselves, we're not perfect either. So we need to, in a true civilization, as he says, to respect each other's rights and honor each other's roles. It's all about the campaign, I honor my parents. You know, it's quite difficult to go to higher levels of civilization without honoring parents. And it's respecting the visible to understand the invisible. We cannot love God without achieving higher levels of respect and love for those who are in our family. And we cannot teach our children either what we don't do ourselves. So, Kirsten, in regard to teaching our children, the ultimate teaching becomes teaching them to serve. What could we say to our listener on the concept of teaching them to serve?
Well, first off, like you were just mentioning, leading by example, but also creating activities that teach our children, not just by our words, not just sharing stories, doing our gospel at home, but also perhaps even engaging in activities where we are physically showing our children and allowing our children to serve others, to think more of others. I mean, today here in the U.S., there's so many volunteer programs that exist out there that are very child-friendly, that encourage other children and their parents to engage in these activities. And we know that nowadays science is teaching us about how good it is to be good and how it really is positive for us across the board and the continuum of our lives. So that's one thing we can teach our children, volunteering, and also educating them at home about the necessities of giving and thinking less about ourselves and acknowledging that there are others who are in more of a poor condition than ourselves.
Exactly. So you're saying about boosting their altruistic features, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. At a very young age, and sharing that and making it something that's very second nature to them. Because once you begin to create, as you discussed earlier, creating new habits, at a young age, eventually becomes second nature for them to volunteer, to constantly, even when they're not volunteering, this habit is already within them to think about others before they think about themselves in a positive aspect.
Exactly.
Creating these new habits.
Creating new habits. But some parents, another oversight here, they claim they are so busy they have no time. But we want to share with parents, time is actually something you make. It's not only given. You make your own time. And it's about priority. Did you know that, dear listener, did you know that Chico Xavier learned with his spiritual mentor, Emmanuel, that it was imperative for his vibratory health to reach out to others? In Spiritism, we say, without charity, there is no salvation. What does that mean? In other words, to achieve balance, we need to be charitable. Of course, charity in the Spiritist concept is all about being good to everyone, beneficence to everyone, being giving people a break in their imperfection, meaning indulgence to people's imperfections, and forgiving offenses. This is the true concept of charity, which should begin at home, but it doesn't stay there. Being good to everyone, meaning caring for others who are out there and are in greater need than ourselves. When we leave that realm of selfishness, as Kirsten is saying, volunteering at so many organizations that already exist is the best way to teach our children to serve, to leave the realm of selfishness and pride, thinking that they are the only ones in need. Oh my God, I need a new cell phone and my life is so miserable because I don't have the new iPad, the new cell phone, the new car, the new clothes, new shoes, new this or the other, whereas there are people who have zero, none. Recently we were in Brazil. In Rio de Janeiro alone, there are more than 1,000 slums. So question is, how can you possibly live in a city with 1,000 slums and not engage into diminishing that misery and poverty? How? It's impossible. It's unthinkable to imagine that we're imprisoned in our selfishness and pride and not reaching out and bringing our children with ourselves. So we would say in the United States, there are so many organizations with so many beautiful programs, so organized that it becomes so easy to reach out that sometimes we think we're not even useful at those programs. But you know what? You are. Even if you go there, for example, at Ronald McDonald House or Believing Tomorrow Foundation connected to Johns Hopkins, there is a Ronald McDonald House of Charity in every city in the United States. You go there and you serve a breakfast or a dinner. And people sometimes come to me and say, oh, but you know, they don't need us. Yes, they do. They do. Because those parents, you may not see them sometimes, but when you make a meal for them, when they come back after spending the whole day desperate, seeing their children getting healed in a hospital, the meal you left for them there is the meal they don't have time to cook. We don't want people to be there to be reverent to us. It's about this invisible work, but a work of love. And when we bring our children to that organizations as such, we're teaching them to think less of themselves and more of others who are in greater need. Is that what you meant as well, Kirsten?
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's really something to be said, and science today is finally validating this idea that, you know, when we help others, we're also helping ourselves. But also when you are in a pit of agony and sadness, especially as you just mentioned, as parents of children who are enduring chemotherapy and radiation, all types of different therapies that are very difficult and hard to watch your children to go through, to come back to this particular home where they're staying and see that for just out of kindness of many people's hearts, someone comes and makes you lunch or dinner. It really is truly soothing for us because we remember our humanity and we realize that we're not alone and that people who don't have to come and help us. And it's a great, rewarding, and healing sensation because oftentimes we cannot take away the lessons that need to be learned by certain people, but we can at least offer comfort to them. And that's a huge help.
Exactly. So, Kirsten, right now we're wrapping up the show. with final tips and hints about the Spiritist view on parenting. As we are all learning it ourselves, it's an endless learning experience because we're destined to live immortally. But we would say, what would you say, Kirsten, to our listener as a major tip to observe oversights that may lead into difficult challenges for their children in the future?
I would definitely suggest, according to the Spiritist literature, to utilize prayer within the family, teaching your children to pray, and educating one another always from a young age. And even if they're older, if there's parents that are listening and saying, oh, my children are already adults or they're already teenagers, have I bypassed, or parents who feel sad that they've missed an opportunity. It's never too late. We can continue to affect the lives of our children in a positive way at any age if we pass that age that's recommended, which is at the 7-year mark. To continue to educate because our children are always still learning, even as adults, and watching our behavior. So to not lose hope, to utilize prayer and education within the home is a major priority. Exactly. So right. So much so that the Spirit of St. Augustine says in the Gospel According to Spiritism, chapter 14, item 9, the task of parents is not as difficult as you might think. It does not require the wisdom of the world. So, believe in yourself as parents and bring Jesus and the guardian angels as your coach, dear parent. So let us now focus on this God at Home moment with Dr. Fonseca and Gabi Ferreira. When we come back, join our hearts in a beautiful prayer to our mothers as a tribute to them on Mother's Day.
Good morning, dear Kardec Radio listeners. Welcome to another meeting with God at Home. I am Naur Fonseca.
And I am Gabi Ferreira. In today's lesson, we will ask ourselves, do we know what it's like to live a life devoted to God? The answer may surprise you as we study chapter 11 of the book Jesus in the Home by Spirit Neo Lucio, psychographed by Chico Xavier, entitled The Disillusioned Saint.
The story told by Jesus in one of the family meetings in the home in Capernaum begins by a venerated devotee who withdrew for good to a secluded cave in the middle of a forest under the pretext of serving God. There, he lived in the midst of his prayers and thoughts. After some time, in the people's imagination, he had become a holy Messiah, and they came to revere him. If someone wanted to involve him or herself in any type of business, he or she was quick to ask the devotee's opinion on the matter.
Wise sage, I wish to begin a new business. What do you think of my business plan?
It would be wrong. Get rid of the thirst for profit. It is nothing but sinful ambition. Come and pray and forget about greed.
Holy Father, I'm in love with this handsome man. What do you think about marriage?
That's nonsense. The flesh is overpowering our spirit. Come and pray, my daughter.
Dear Master, I have been invited to run for mayor of the city. Do you think I could serve my people as a public administrator?
That would spell disaster. Rid yourself of the passion for power. It is pure vanity and pride.
Venerable Saint, my 50th birthday is coming, and I would like to throw a big party for my closest friends. I would like to invite your sainthood. Would you come?
That would be a calamity. The joy of the people is chaos. Stay away of such a temptation and pray.
And so, in light of the immense authority that the saint enjoyed, his consultants would become inconsolably sad and would begin to spend their free time alone with an utterly paralyzed soul. But time, which changes all things, brought death to the lazy worshipper's physical body.
All of his followers were sure that he had been carried off to heaven, and he himself had believed that from the grave he would go straight to paradise. But to his utter horror, he was led by the forces of darkness to a terrible purgatory of murderers. Sobbing desperately, in light of his unexpected affliction, he asked why his spirit had been sent to such a frightful and hellish whirlpool. He was told that even though he had not actually been a common martyr while on earth, here he was regarded as a martyr of the courage and hopes of hundreds of his fellow humans.
John, the disciple, was very touched by this story and said, "Master, I would never have thought that excessive devotion could lead someone to such great misfortune."
But Christ responded impassively. Let us plant belief and confidence in others, understanding, however, that each person has the path that is proper for them. Faith without works is an unlit lamp.
In order to be truly devoted to God, we shouldn't live a life of isolation or contemplation.
Joanna de Angelis tells us that we can do more for humanity if we choose to.
Extend your hand to one who has fallen.
Say a kind word to someone else.
Smile at the lonely person, offering him brotherhood.
Compete for the honor of building a better world and a happier society.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Would you like to liberate yourself from your life struggles or to find inner balance? The Inner Journey CD has 3 beautiful visualizations that will help you bring harmony to your life. As Joanna de Angelis tells us to, live in a way that you leave enlightening footprints in your pathway as if they were stars pointing out the pathway to happiness. To find this CD, go to the bookstore on the Spiritist Society of Baltimore webpage, www.ssbaltimore.org. That is www.ssbaltimore.org, and start your inner journey today.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Available for purchase, the book Conception of God by Herculano Pires. In this book, Professor Herculano Pires writes about the impossibility to conceive nothingness and the logic of God's existence. Learn more by purchasing your copy online at www.sgny.org.
Save the date for the 6th U.S. Spiritist Symposium that will be held at the Rialto Center for the Arts at Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia on Saturday, May 12, 2012. This year's topic is Love and Enlightenment, a Pathway to Self-Healing. Come out and enrich your mind, body, and soul. For more info, go to www.spiritistsymposium.org.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, these are the final moments in this program talking about Parents Oversight today, Children's Challenge tomorrow. There is so much to learn. This is just the beginning. Every month, the first Saturday of the month, we're going to bring topics on empowerment for parents. Society nowadays needs to restore the balance and the harmony of families. There's no other way but to empower parents so they can guide the lives and educate the lives of their children. As per Spirit St. Augustine in the Gospel According to Spiritism, item 9 of chapter 14, all evils have their origin in selfishness and pride. So parents should watch for the least signs that reveal the seeds of these vices and take care to combat them without waiting for them to put down deeper roots. So here we are with Kirsten Demelo, who helped us unveil some mysteries regarding to parenting. So now, as a tribute to all mothers, as in a week we're celebrating Mother's Day, and we shall be grateful always as one of the features of honoring parents. Kirsten, would you please lead us into a heartfelt prayer in gratitude to our mothers, please?
Absolutely. So we lift up our minds to our divine Creator in great thanks for these moments of teachings, of lessons that are dear to our hearts and that touch the lives of all those who are listening and those who will later listen on demand. May it serve as a great purpose to educate ourselves and our children always. And we also like to ask for guidance for each one of our listeners from across the globe, each person in this world, for us to continue to endeavor to work harder on ourselves as individuals and to be more kind, forgiving of those around us, those that were placed in our intimate family lives, and those who we meet as we encounter in the streets, at our jobs. And we continue to remember these necessities to grow and assist one another. And with these thoughts, we give great thanks, and so be it.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, for always being at service at Kardec Radio. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa.
So, dear listener, we wish you many blessings and remind you that in a week we have the Sync Symposium in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States of America, and also a beautiful show with Dr. Stanley Krippner. We'll be here to talk about spirits in post-traumatic stress disorder. Can you believe it? Yes, come here back at Kardec Radio next week and listen more about it. And we wish you many blessings, a beautiful week. God bless us all.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.